Hi there. If you're watching this on YouTube, or you're wanting to watch any of my content on my channel, or both for that matter, I would strongly recommend hitting the subscribe button and comment and like on any videos if you may wish, because this is a general audience channel. Also, this video is not made for kids, it is for older fans and adults alike. So please sit back and enjoy the video.
And now, our feature presentation.
Spiteful Gesture. Based on the original story by Mainland Studios, adapted, edited, and told by Julyleonard. Only a few weeks had passed since Edward had taken his first passenger train. It had been Edward's first day out in a long time, and almost all the other engines had given Edward their full support, even Gordon. However, two did not. The Fat Director had brought two blue engines to the Northwestern Railway on trial, and they were quite displeased with Edward. They didn't have any names, only numbers: 98462 and 87546. These two engines had a great deal in common. They were both rude and cocky. They prided themselves greatly to the point where even Gordon, for all his arrogance, grew hurt and impatient with them. However, unlike Gordon, neither of those two ever seemed to know when enough was enough. So you finally managed to make it out of the station, I see, Edward, cackled 98462 as they were back down into the sheds one night. Edward had just returned from his first passenger run and was feeling quite proud. "What a useless engine you are, Edward," remarked 87546. "I'm sure we'll be hearing plenty of passenger complaints tomorrow." "Indeed," agreed 98462. "You must have been running late all day." The others gave the two engines a foul look, but Edward just smiled. "Actually, we were right on time. I'm happy to be useful." He chuckled. Edward knew that as long as he did not let 98462 and 87546's words bother him, the engines wouldn't berate him for long. And soon enough, not getting any sort of reaction out of Edward, the two big blue bullies drifted off to sleep. The next day, as Edward was now working regularly on passenger trains, the Fat Director had extended the timetable to run later into the evenings. This now meant that Edward, Gordon, and 98462 would be running the passenger services all across the island. Edward had his doubts, but as usual, he was determined to work his hardest. Fortunately for him, he ran the loop line, so as to sub Gordon and 98462 at the big station. A few weeks went by, and Edward felt his trains were getting heavier and heavier, or he was getting older and older. The other engines had noticed this and offered to help. "No, thank you," panted Edward. "You have your own trains to manage. We can't upset the Fat Director's timetable." Little did Edward know that 98462 had heard everything and made a plan. The next morning, Edward had arrived at the big station to collect his first passenger train of the day. When he arrived, he saw that there were no coaches. Thomas must have woken up late again, he thought. He was just about to collect some more when, to his shock, 98462 came whooshing and wheeshing into the platform with Edward's coaches. "No need to fret," he said snootingly. "I'll be taking your train today. We mustn't upset the Fat Director's timetable. Ha 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 ha. He laughed loudly as the guard blew his whistle and set off. Edward was upset, but he knew it'd be best to get on with his work. That evening, Edward was backing into his berth as 9462 was boasting loudly. "We don't need Edward anymore. I've proven that I can manage 2 trains at once. Anyhow, why keep him around when all he does is get in the way, 87546 agreed, but the other engines didn't. "Edward helped build these rails that we run on," fumed Thomas. "And without him, mind you, none of us can have a railway to work on." 9462 was having none of it and interjected. "He's a thing of the past," he said. "Us bigger tender engines are faster, stronger, and more up-to-date than that old iron." Edward finally gave up. He decided to take a stand against 9462. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual to collect his coaches and make it to the platform before 9462. The yard felt silent, and Edward felt sure he had beaten him. But he was wrong. "And what do you think you're doing?" scowled 9462. Edward tried to sound brave. "Collecting my coaches for my passenger train." "I don't think so," 9462 growled. "You are nothing but slow and old. You are going to sit in the shed and wait to be sent away. Or even better, scrapped," he finished, grinning. Before Edward could say another word, 9462 backed down onto his line and coupled up to his coaches. Edward's heart sank, but not for long. "And just what do you think you're doing?" bellowed a familiar voice. It was the Fat Director. Collecting my train, sir," 9462 replied, trying to look as innocent as he could. "From what I've just seen, that is not the case at all. I've had several passenger complaints saying that they were taken to the wrong stations and fellow workers about your treatment towards other engines, you understand." 9462's face at this point turned as white as a ghost. "My engines," the Fat Director went on, "work hard and help fellow engines when needed. But you have done neither of those. Let me remind you that I brought you and 87546 here to work here on trial. And I'm not sure if you could be trusted to work on my railway. I shall have to think about it some more. But for now, I want you to go straight back to the sheds immediately." 9462 was so embarrassed he just couldn't muster a response. So he sulked back to the sheds. The Fat Director then turned to Edward. "You must understand this, Edward," he said. "You are one of my engines. You might not think so, but you are not alone on this railway. If you have any troubles, you must come and see me right away. Understand?" Edward could see from his warm smile that the Fat Director was told everything. He looked across the yard and saw Thomas, Henry, and Gordon all smiling back. "Now then," finished the Fat Director, "you have a train to pull, and after that, I want you to have a nice long rest." "Oh, thank you, sir," smiled Edward happily. As he set off, Edward felt his position on the railway was secure again. He had no more troubles from 9462 further on. That was until 87546. Well, I mustn't say any more, or I shall spoil the next story. Trouble with the Express. Based on the original story by TARDIS9, adapted, edited, and told by July Leonard. Just at the bottom of Gordon's Hill, on the inside line, the curve is significantly tighter than all the others. This was mainly so there would be enough space for the engines to go successfully navigate the curve without either hitting anything on either side of the line or coming off the rails if the train is going slow enough. If the train went too fast, it would tilt too much and come off the rails, whether if an engine is pulling trucks or not. Most of the engines on the Fact Director's Railway are very careful when going over this particular section of track. They knew it was for their own good, but 87546, however, had other ideas. "You're all just too scared," he scoffed one day. "You should try a bit more record-breaking and be a bit more daring like me." Edward rolled his eyes. He was one of the few engines who stood up to 98462 and 87546. "You, with all your speeding 87546, should at least know better than to go tearing around right corners," he argued. "Pah," retorted 87546. "That curve is safe enough to go at 100 miles per hour. I am being incredibly foolish," snapped Edward. "Agreed," said Gordon. "Express engines may be fastest and best, 87546, but our railway, safety, and being on time both share top priority." 87546 just snorted in disgust and set off to collect his coaches. The coaches were waiting for him in the yard. They had heard all about his and 98462's behavior with them, and they were not too keen on having him take them out. And they were right not to, for when 87546 backed towards them so sharply, he ended up bumping them hard. "Ow, ow, 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 ow!" they groaned. "Watch it, you big brute!" But 87546 took no notice. As soon as he was coupled up, he pulled out so sharply that, clang! A coupling broke, just in front of the first coach. "You silly engine!" snapped the shunter. "You ripped a coupling clean off. Now we'll have to find a replacement." But 87546 didn't care. He decided best to collect Gordon's coaches for the express instead. But everyone was still very cross with him. Things got worse for 87546 as the journey went on. At the next station, a signal was broken, so they had to stop to let off passengers anyway. 87546 seethed impatiently at this. "We should have gone through. We're late enough already," he moaned to his crew. "No one can say that we disagree with you," said his driver, who personally wanted to finish the journey, if only to get home and away from his disrespectful engine. "But it's orders." "Pah! You're just a goody two-shoes, too nervous to take a few tiny risks," said 87546 rudely. "We would have made it safely through the whole line if you weren't such a coward." "I'd rather be a coward than a reckless piece of scrap," the driver muttered to the fireman, who solemnly agreed with him. Half an hour later, amidst from the complaints from the passengers, not held by 87546's insults, the workmen had finished the signal. By then, some of the passengers had decided they had had enough, so they left the express anyway. 87546 grew crosser and crosser at this. When the guard blew his whistle again, he bumped and banged the coaches as they set off. "Ow, ow, 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 ow!" they screamed. We don't like that! We don't like that! We don't like that!
Shut up and get moving! Snapped 87546. We're late enough already as it is. Every wise engine knows never to bump coaches, or else they would get back at them. They were soon climbing up Gordon's Hill when 87546 started to pick up speed. Since his train was now half empty, he didn't need a banker as much. As soon as they near the top, the coaches began their tricks. "This is it!" thundered the first coach. "Let's get him, girls!" And banging their buffers, they pushed 87546 down the hill. To make matters worse, they were now on the down line, the same line as the sharp curve on the other side. When 87546 saw the curve ahead of him, he realized his mistake and tried to stop, but by then it was far too late. Crash! Luckily, the driver and fireman had jumped clear before the crash, but 87546 laid on his side, looking battered, bruised, and damaged. Edward soon arrived and moved alongside the wreckage. It was worse than he thought. He saw a few passengers outside the train looking badly injured. One of them was being carried on a stretcher. "Get the injured passengers to the last station as fast as you can," ordered the guard. "I'll telephone for help." "Right away, sir," responded Edward, and quickly raced away with the injured passengers on board. Thankfully, the fat director wasn't among these injured passengers, but he was far from happy for what 87546 had done. "This is why I never liked these big engines," he snapped. "I would have thought you would know better than to do something as stupid as this, 87546. An engine of your size should know better than to go that ridiculously fast. Even Gordon knows that. But because of you, a few passengers were injured, one of whom, the vicar of Wellsworth, seriously." It wasn't my fault, sir. These coaches made me go faster," replied 87546. "Of course we did," snapped the first coach. "You bumped us, remember?" "And your own coaches, too," agreed another. "You wanted to go faster just because we were held up by a broken signal," agreed the third. "And we know how you and 9462 are like," finished a fourth. "So, not only you have put your passengers in danger, you've also been bumping and banging your coaches about again," yelled the fat director fiercely. "That's it. I have had it with you, 87546. As soon as you are mended, you will stay in the shed till we have decided what to do with you." As soon as 87546 was repaired, he returned to the sheds and was left there for a very, very, very long time. He resented the fat director fiercely for this, although he and 98462 would pay the price for their foolishness eventually. End of the line. Based on the original stories by TARDIS 9 and Sean Gannon, and Trials and Tribulations by NWR58. Adapted, edited, and told by July Leonard. 98462 and 87546 were stuck in the sheds for a very, very, very long time,
and never sought any repentance following their accidents. They thought they were in the right and constantly criticized the Fat Director and the other engines for this. I should be pulling high-speed expresses, not slow goods. I'm clearly too good for an engine for this park railway, said 9462. That makes two of us, agreed 87546. I should be in use, not standing in the shed collecting dust like that relic Edward should be doing. More likely, the Fat Director should retire him, or just keep him in the shunting yards like little Thomas, put in 9462. Can't pull his own trains without messing up, if you ask me, replied 87546. Is that so? Said a familiar voice. Henry the Blue Engine had overheard the conversation. Then perhaps you two should try shunting your own trains. I'd like to see you try, Henry, 9462 grunted. Oh, no, I couldn't, boasted Henry, pretending to show off his Doncaster design. I'm an A1 prototype, and we A1 prototypes have no interest in collecting our own trains, goodness knows. Then an idea flew into 9462's funnel. Say 87546, we're confined to the sheds, aren't we? He whispered. Listen, I've got an idea to get us out. And they whispered to each other. Oh, we'll shunt our own trains all right, won't we, 98462? Oh, yes, 87546, first thing in the morning. 9462 then whispered again to 87546. We'll show that fathead what we can do. Little did the two engines know that Henry had a plan of his own to make them see sense. It might have been better if they had. They're up to something, Edward said later that night. I just know it. Up to something? Snorted Henry. Stuff and nonsense. Those two stuck-ups wouldn't get up early in the morning to fetch their own coal if they run out. I know, replied Edward. Does that catch you off guard at all? He asked. Not really, but I wouldn't dwell on it, replied Henry. Good night, Edward. But Edward thought about it for so long, he barely got any sleep. The next day, when the shed foreman came, 9462 told him that 87546 was to be let out to look after his goods trains for the time being. It's the Fat Director's orders, lied 98462. He came by this morning in a hurry and told me to let you know. I have to look after the express, the Wild Nor'wester, while Gordon is away for repairs, he went on. His reversing gear is stuck on reverse, I've been told. The foreman, suspecting nothing, agreed to this decision, and so it was arranged. He sent one of the workmen round to 9462 and 87546's crews' houses to let them know. By this point, the two blue engines were as good as their word. They set to work collecting their own trains. 9462 collected the coaches for the express, while 87546 arranged some trucks for his goods train. At the yards, Thomas was surprised to see 9462's goods train assembled already, but he soon grew more confused than surprised when he recognized the actual number on the blue engine's tender. 87546, he said. Aren't you supposed to be in your shed? He said. I mean, last I heard, you were banned from pulling trains. And should 9462 be collecting these goods? Shortage of engines, Thomas, and 9462 is looking after the express for Gordon due to his reversing gear being repaired, 87546 said quickly, hoping the Fat Director hadn't heard them. This was partly true, given Gordon's jammed reversing gear being mended at the works. But Thomas didn't realize that 87546 was lying to him. To make matters worse, what neither engine noticed was one of the couplings of two of 87546's trucks had been loosened. The cause of this was two naughty boys, who were the sons of Henry's driver, who had been sent by the big blue engine himself. Meanwhile, 9462 pulled into the big station, gloating with pride. Finally,
A proper engine on a proper train. That will show, Fat Hat, I'm a far better suit for the express than that Gordon.
Little did he know that his crew had been called over by the station master to have a meeting with him at his office. It wasn't only until when the same boys from earlier jumped onto his footplate and fiddled with his controls. His actual crew hadn't reckoned without the guard's whistle as a result. By then, the boys jumped out, just as 9462 pulled away, feeling very pleased with himself. As he pulled out, the boys headed straight back to Henry, who was very pleased.
Well done, you two, he grinned. That'll show those two troublesome engines a lesson.
And indeed it would. At first, 9462 was enjoying himself enormously.
Hurry, hurry, hurry,
he called to his coaches.
Easy there, easy there, easy there,
the coaches called back. In all honesty, it would have been a spectacular run, but 9462 hadn't reckoned without one thing. Presently, he began going faster and faster. He then realized that there was no one in his cab.
Help! Help! I can't stop!
He cried. Far ahead, 87546 was now climbing up Gordon's Hill with his trucks. It wasn't until they were halfway up when the loosened coupling finally gave way with a snap, and the last few trucks began running backwards down the hill.
Oh no! Cried 87546. Back, driver! Reverse! Quick!
Further back, 9462, who was still out of control, suddenly noticed the runaway trucks heading right towards him. Crash!
Oh dear, oh dear! Are you all right back there?
87546 asked as he came to a stop.
I think so, coughed 9462. Who on earth is responsible for this? He demanded.
That would be me, replied a familiar voice. It was Henry, coming into view with the breakdown train in tow. So, 9462, how does it feel being a prime example of Top Link Express? The big blue engine's smugness turned into horror by the sight of 9462's passengers. You see, what none of the three engines noticed was there was a buffet coach in Gordon's Express. Because 9462 was traveling at a high speed, food and drinks spilled all over the place. The passengers were more of a mess than hurt, and they expressed their complaints to the fat director and told him what a bad railway it was. That engine of yours, they protested. I hope you're going to pay for my spoiled clothes. That was a most uncomfortable ride. I didn't come all this way for flying. Give us our money back. Now, everybody, the fat director announced as he addressed the passengers, I ensure that all your spoiled clothes will all be recovered in no time. As for you two, he went on, I shall talk to you later. Henry, he continued, please set to work clearing up this mess at once. Yes, sir, sighed Henry. He now realized what he had done. Later that day, the fat director came to see the three engines. Well, I am absolutely appalled by your behavior during these trials. The other engines told me what you both said, and I am not pleased to say the least. But sir, it wasn't... The two engines protested, but it was no use. I am not in the mood to care, came the blunt reply. You have both been rude, spiteful, careless bullies. I do not tolerate a behavior like that on my railway. But sir... That's enough, the both of you, snapped the fat director. As soon as I can arrange it, you will both return to the other railway and never come back. Do I make myself clear? Yes, sir. The fat director then turned to Henry. I confess that we're all fed up with their behavior, Henry, but you should know better than to get revenge on others for bullying you. Furthermore, he went on, you should have let me arrange for a new engine to look after the express for Gordon, instead of all that happened today. I am most disappointed in you. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, moaned Henry. However, the fat director finished, smiling. Since we'll be receiving no more troublesome antics on my railway, we will say nothing more. Now then, Henry, can I count on you and the other engines to handle all the trains between you until I can make other arrangements?
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, sir, smiled Henry happily, feeling much better. At the end of the week, the 2 blue engines were ready to go. No one, not even Henry, came to see them off. They didn't deserve it.